Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at die Sonn, sich, mit ihrem Glanz, which translates to the sun has turned its brilliance. It's a fairly straightforward chorale. I do apologize for the eraser marks. I am so tired today after work that I started doing a second draft of my analysis on my clean copy, and I am trying to do the best that I can to conserve paper because I do end up printing a lot for the videos, so I just erased. So hopefully you can forgive the light artifacts of what I had started analyzing before I even started recording. So we're just going to hop right into the analysis on this one. Not too much to write home about. In fact, the most interesting thing about this chorale is probably right here at the beginning. We have no key signature, we start with D minor, and we end with D major. So the overall tonality of this chorale is D minor, but we have no key signature, and we find that sometimes in minor keys especially, Bach will alter the key signature that we're used to seeing by today's standards, and that isn't to suggest the fact that Bach didn't use conventional key signatures the majority of the time, because he does. The majority of the time we do see key signatures that accurately reflect the key, but I think the key signature had a higher purpose in Bach's eyes, where we see Bach using key signatures to eliminate the need for accidentals, and if he finds himself writing more B naturals than he does B flats, then removing the B flat from the key signature seems to be a pragmatic solution to otherwise having to write in a bunch of accidentals. Bach was an artisan and he had to crank music out, so it wouldn't surprise me that that was the relationship he had with key signatures, but it's a relatively small detail. We have seen it in the past. It's not unprecedented like the first time we encountered it, but we're just going to hop right into the analysis. So D minor is our first chord. It is our tonic triad, and we go immediately to another tonic triad, D, A, D, and F, which is another D minor chord. We don't need to reanalyze. We then have G minor, G, B flat, D, and G, which is our 4 chord. A little bit of a passing tone here that could potentially hint at E diminished in first inversion, but it's only one voice being changed. 4 and 2/6 are virtually the same chord, both in function and in pitch content, but whatever way you look at it, this is some sort of plagal cadence where we have a non-dominant chord resolving to a tonic functioning chord here, D, D, F, and A, D minor. Moving into our next phrase, we move to the key of A minor, and we end in a perfect authentic cadence. This first chord, which is D minor, D, F, A, and D, is our gateway to the key of A minor. It is our 4 chord, and for some reason this paper is a little waxy. Sorry if the pencil's not coming up as vividly as it typically does, or doesn't. I don't know, it just feels like I'm writing differently on this piece of paper for some reason. Either way, we move to A minor, our tonic, A, E, A, and C. And then we go immediately to E major, E, E, G sharp, and C. But of course, the C is a suspension over the bass. Kind of an interesting suspension. It would be a 6/5 suspension, but it does create a dissonance over the alto. And in fact, I'm realizing this is not a suspension over the bass like it typically is. This is a suspension over the alto. This is a 4/3 suspension over the alto, and a diminished fourth to a major third. But we know that 5 is being implied here. A little delayed passing 7th here as well before we get F, C, A, and A, which is F major in root position. That is a 3 chord. And, oh, I'm so sorry, it is not a 3 chord. We are in the key of A minor. It is a 6 chord. That makes a little bit more sense from a normative point of view. We have 2 passing tones, one in the tenor and one in the melody, and a neighbor tone in the alto, and that leaves us with F, D, G, and B, which is G7 over F. That's a 7/4-2 chord, a subtonic 7th, because we have, oh no, I'm so sorry, it's not a subtonic 7th. This G sharp carries over from earlier in the beat. It is 7 minor, 7 fully diminished in third inversion, so 7/4-2 with a complete degree sign, not a half degree sign. and that resolves to A minor, C, E, A, and C. Now we do have a 4-2 chord here, and it does not resolve where we would expect, which would be 3-6. It actually resolves to 1-6, but I think what's more important to bear in mind here is the fact that the 4-2 chord is the chord that's happening in passing, so the bass is staying static, and by virtue of the fact that the bass isn't moving here, it turns into a 4-2 chord rather than a 4-2 chord happening on the beat. If a 4-2 chord happened on the beat, we would see it resolve, or most likely resolve, to a 3-6 chord or some type of some type of E in the bass chord. But because it's a passing chord, it's mostly the upper voices that are resolving the way we would expect, and the bass is free to move where it pleases. Any voice is free to move where it pleases, but speaking from the perspective of someone locked into the tonal procedure Bach's time, the bass is free to move wherever it pleases. We also have some non-chord tones in the lower voices as well before we get E, B, A, and B. This A is a 4-3 suspension over the bass. We know that 5 is being implied here, E major. F sharp is a little brief neighbor tone here. We got some melodic minor going on before we get another E major chord, E, E, G sharp, and B. A little delayed passing 7th here in the tenor before we go to not A minor but A major, and that would be our tonic as a major chord. But we know that cadences like this where Bach moves to the key of the minor dominant end up being contextualized that way because he ends up pivoting back to D minor in the first place. Or rather, instead of the first place, he just ends up pivoting back to the key of the tonic, and this is sort of a glorified half cadence, or maybe 1 step or 2 steps beyond a half cadence. Moving ahead, we have actually a half cadence where we're seeing another A major chord, but this C sharp is functioning as our leading tone. And of course, A major, like I was just mentioning, turns into our 5 chord, and we're going to move directly to D minor from here. F, D, A, and D is our tonic triad, D minor in first inversion. We then have B flat, D, A, and D. I think we could make the argument that this is a 6-7 chord. It would be incomplete. The reason why I feel like this 6-7 chord is relevant, instead of me saying that the beats on or the downbeats are accented non-chord tones, because they do kind of look like suspensions, right? We have like a 7-6 suspension going on, is because we saw this chord progression earlier as well, where we saw 6 going to 7, and that's exactly what's happening here, B flat, E, G, and D. However, instead of a fully diminished chord, we are seeing a minor 7 flat 5 chord, but still a 6-7 chord in a very similar configuration. So I believe Bach is harkening back to that previous progression, and it does resolve where we would expect A, F, B, and D. Just kidding, it does not resolve where we would expect. The bass resolves where we would expect, but Bach quickly turns around to making this G sharp our chord tone. G sharp, F, B, and D. Another 7 chord, 2 consecutive 7 chords. This is G sharp fully diminished, 7th in root position, which would be 7-7 of 5, because G sharp is the leading tone to A, and A is our dominant. And that's exactly where we go, A, E, A, and C sharp, which is our 5 chord in root position. Looking ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of F major. We are going to stay in D minor for a couple of beats though before we modulate. C sharp, A, and E is our 5 chord in first inversion, so we'll just change the figured bass. This G is a passing 7th before we get D, A, F, and D. That's our tonic triad in root position, and I believe this begins our modulation zone. Any of the points beyond here could be valid in terms of analyzing a modulation to the key of F. We have a passing tone in the bass, and then we have F, D, F, and A, which is our tonic triad in first inversion. So similar to the 5 chord we saw earlier where we didn't reiterate the Roman numeral, I'm doing the same thing here. And I do think this is where we pivot to the key of F. This is 6-6. I tend to pick where I think the latest point in the zone is. And of course, you could say that the modulation happens after this point as well, but it just sounds so much like a 6-2-5-1 progression in the key of F beyond this point that I don't think I could hear anything beyond this point in the key of D minor. F, D, G, and B flat is G minor 7 over F, which is 2-4-2, like I said, or I didn't say the inversion, but this is a 2-4-2. But bringing attention to the 2-4-2 chord. Unlike this 4-2 chord here, we see the resolution to the chord like we would expect. It goes the root down a fifth and the bass down by step, so E, C, G, and B flat. So 5 is our Roman numeral, which is a fifth below 2, and it is in first inversion because the bass is a step below, or a half step in this case, below the tone from before. And then we resolve to F major, F, C, F, and A, tonic triad, root position, anticipation in the melody before we get B flat, D, F, and G. Another G minor 7 chord, this time in first inversion, so it would be a 6-5 chord. We know that Bach loves 2 6-5 chords, especially in cadential situations. This E is a non-chord tone, this D is a chord tone, this B flat's a chord tone. We then have C, G, E, and G, which is our 5 chord, C major. C is a chord tone, B flat's a little passing 7th here, and then we cadence on F major, F, A, C, and F, which is our tonic triad in root position. We have another short phrase that ends in a perfect authentic cadence in the key of D minor, and I think we pretty much modulate straight away. We could even say that the F is part of the key of D minor and say this is a 3 chord, because after all we do have that would make this a 3-6-2-5-1 progression, but all in all it doesn't quite sound like F going to B flat is an indication of D minor from the start. So even though this B flat chord is 6 in the key, or even though, sorry, this F chord is 3 in the key of D minor, it sounds more so like this B flat is both 4 in the key of F major, B flat, D, and F, and 6 in the key of D minor as well. And like I mentioned a little bit ago, this takes us to 2, G, B flat, D, and E, E flat, or sorry, E minor 7 flat 5, and that takes us to 5, A, C sharp, and E, which is our dominant in root position. A little passing 7th there in the tenor before we get D minor, D, F, A, and D, which is our tonic triad. This little brief reprieve to D minor, which I'm calling our overall tonic of the chorale, is going to take us to F major for a very large swath of the last leg of the chorale. This D minor chord here, D, D, F, and A, is a repeat of the previous chord, or it's every voice moves, but it's the same Roman numeral and same structure in terms of the notes. But I do believe it's our gateway back to the key of F minor. It turns into 6, and that's going to take us right to F major, A, C, F, and C, which is our tonic triad in first inversion. This G is a neighbor tone, this E is a neighbor tone, and coincidentally, I feel like this is some type of 5 chord, maybe like a 5-6-4 chord that sort of breaks up the monotony of seeing the same chord twice. A, C, F, and C, which is just another 1-6 chord with a passing tone in the bass. C, C, E, and G is our 5 chord, C major. This A is a non-chord tone. This A is a non-chord tone. Gives us a little bit of a 3-6 chord vibe, but I don't really think it's, actually, I am going to mark that. And the reason why I'm going to mark that is because of the chord we see on the next beat. So this is a 3-6 chord in passing, D, D, F, and B flat. This would be a 4-6 chord, and if 5 going to 4 is a deceptive progression, we see 5 go to 4 with some frequency. However, 3 is, I feel like, functioning as a buffer between the two chords. 3 goes to 4 with more frequency than I would say 5 goes to 4, so maybe there is some intention there. Either way, 2 voices are moving, and I feel like that, for me, is the bare minimum to constitute a chord progression, and I'll just leave it there. It's not hurting anybody. But this imperfect authentic cadence, sorry, I'm trying to fix my pencil lead. It is not agreeing with me at the moment. This imperfect authentic cadence finishes with some passing tones, or a passing tone, a neighbor tone, and anticipation here, which, including this B flat, spells C7 over E, E, C, G, and B flat. And it's a subdivided authentic cadence. We cadence on F major, F, C, F, and A, which is our tonic triad. Very short penultimate phrase, which is still in the key of F major, makes a direct connection to the first phrase. It is a plagal cadence. It's the same length and has similar melodic components, at least in terms of the contour of the melody. We have this ascending figure here, but it's almost as if it tacks on a note at the beginning that could have been at the beginning of the melody, and I guess technically it is here with this A, but this ascending figure right here, A, C, D, matches a similar configuration to this ascending figure here, and they both end on the same note, except for this would be a transposed version of that. We start off with D minor, which is our 6th chord, D, D, F, and A. We then go back to F major over A, so a similar progression to how we started the previous phrase, A, C, F, and C, so 1, 6. Then we get B flat, C, F, and D, the C being a 9/8 suspension over the bass. This would be a B flat major chord, which is 4. And then we cadence on F, F, C, F, and A, our tonic triad in root position. And that leads us to our final phrase, which concludes with a perfect authentic cadence in the key of D minor, and we're looking for a point at which we modulate, and I think we stay in F for a couple of beats at least. We start off with C major over E, E, C, G, and C, which is 5, 6. And then we go back to F major, F, C, G, and A, typical Bach, using a 9/8 suspension over the bass in the alto. We're really looking at F, C, F, and A with this little passing 7th here. This is our tonic triad. And then we see B flat, B flat, B flat, D, and G, or F. I think both of them could be valid chord tones. I'm going to say this F is a passing 7th, and this is actually 4, 6, which is actually our gateway. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself, which is 2, 6. G minor is our 2 in the key of F, and in the key of D minor it is our 4 chord. 4, 6. A little bit of an interesting progression coming up next. We have G, B flat, D, and E, which is E minor 7 flat 5 over G. We know that Bach loves 2, 6, 5 chords, especially in cadential situations, but 4 going to 2 really isn't that strong of a progression because they have the same function. They're mostly consisting of the same tones, especially 2, 6, 5 or 2, 7. 2, 7 can't be spelled without a 4 chord, right? We need G, B flat, and D to spell the chord, so all 2, 6, 5 is a G minor chord with an E somewhere in there. They even have the same root, or sorry, they have potentially the same bass, but here the basses are different. There's a little passing tone to create a sense of buffer as well, but all in all I think it's an interesting progression to bring the chorale to a close with. After our 2, 6, 5 chord, we get what we would expect, a 5 chord, A, E, C sharp, and E. It's our dominant. Anticipation in the melody, A is a chord tone, a little brief passing tone here in the tenor as well, before we cadence on D major, as Bach often does in his minor chorales. He ends with a major tonic chord via that Picardy third, and that is today's analysis. All in all, like I said, really not too much to write home about, other than the fact that there's some key signature disagreement. Other than that, really the harmony is fairly straightforward, and there really isn't too much to talk about, so I think I'm just going to leave the outro short and sweet. If you're interested in following me along on my journey to analyze all of the chorale harmonizations, feel free to subscribe to the channel. You can hit the notification icon button as well, and like the video if you enjoyed the content. Thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel by doing so. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.